Some arguments are relevant, but they're weak. Others are strong, but totally off topic. Your job is to find both strong and relevant arguments. And I'm going to show you the exact system to do that. My name's Farhan, I'm a junior doctor, and I've helped over 100 students get into both medicine and dentistry across Australia. And in this video, you're going to learn how to find a relevant argument more often by the principle of relevance, and find a strong argument more often by the SAFE framework. So let's jump into relevance. When the question proposes an issue, we must ensure that the argument, the strongest argument, addresses this particular issue. You can have weak arguments that are also relevant. You can also have really strong arguments, but they are completely irrelevant to the issue. So your job here is to find ones that are both strong and relevant. Now, just as a disclaimer, none of the other tips that I go through for the SAFE framework matter if the problem solution match is not satisfied, if the argument that you pick is not relevant. This is the most important thing. So let's go through a couple of work examples to put this into practice. Starting off with this one. I want you to pause the video and have a go at this question. All right, so let's jump through this question together now. So, should local councils invest in building more cycling lanes to reduce traffic congestion in city centres? So, to reduce traffic congestion is our issue. That's the whole reason we're doing this. Our argument needs to talk to that. We've got option A here. Cycling is an environmentally friendly form of transport. Fantastic, lovely stuff, but it doesn't actually address the traffic concern. So probably not the answer we're looking for. B, yes, providing dedicated cycling infrastructure encourages more commuters to cycle instead of driving, directly reducing the number of cars on the road. Seems like a good one. No, building cycling lanes would be expensive and require council to divert funds. Okay, so potentially, but again, it doesn't talk about how it could impact traffic congestion in any way. So for that reason, probably not. And then D, no, cycling in bad weather is unpleasant and dangerous. So many people would not use those lanes during winter months. So once again, irrelevant, plus also quite an opinionated one at that as well. So for that reason, B here is our strongest option because of how relevant it is to the issue. Let's kick on into our next one. Using the learnings from what we just did, have a go at this question. Okay, so let's run through it. To improve patient care, this is the issue at hand. So everything that we're looking for has that lens in mind. So A, yes, effective communication between doctors and patient leads to better treatment and improved health outcomes. Health outcomes, that's patient care, right? So this is looking like a really good one. But let's look at why B, C, and D might not be the answer we're looking for. Yes, doctors work long hours under significant stress and need opportunities for professional development to maintain their well-being. Again, this doesn't talk to patient care. So for that reason, probably not. C, no, doctors already spend too much time in meetings and training sessions when they should be treating patients. Probably not. And D, no, communication skills are largely innate and cannot be meaningfully improved through training courses. So that's a bit of an assumption. We'll go through why that's a weak one in our later frameworks. But for the reason of relevance, it looks like A is our best answer in this case because it's strong. It ties a direct correlation between effective communication and better healthcare, and also is directly relevant to the issue that we're looking at. Cool. So let's go through one more example here. Feel free to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so let's run through this together now. Should universities charge higher tuition fees for courses that lead to higher earning careers to increase funding for research? So we've got two parts here. The main issue at hand is you wanting to increase funding for research, but the proposed mechanism for that is increasing the higher tuition fees. So let's look at our options. Yes, graduates in fields like medicine and law earn substantially more over their lifetimes and can afford to repay high debts. So, maybe, but we'll keep that on the back burner. B, yes, students choosing lucrative career paths would pay more while studying, generating immediate additional revenue, which they could invest into research facilities and projects. So this is directly relevant to what we're talking about here. Fantastic. So this is looking okay. Okay, I'm going to put a tick next to it. C, no, all students should have equal access to education regardless of their choosing field of study. So notice how it doesn't talk about the higher fees in any way. Okay, so that one's a bit of a maybe at this point in time. It doesn't really talk about the research side. And D, no, many students from disadvantaged backgrounds aspire to high earning careers and would be deterred by these higher fees. So this one, even though it doesn't talk about the funding for research side of things, it does address this higher tuition fee side. And for that reason, it's also a good option. So how do you pick between B and D here? Look, if based upon what I've told you so far, you picked B, I don't blame you because that's just what I've been telling you. But at some point when we have multiple relevant answers, we need to think about what is the strongest of the lot. So D here is going to be the answer of choice here for the reason that it's one that is more ethically aligned with what you'd want the medical profession to look like. It also gives you a reasonable correlation between why increasing the fees would disadvantage people and maybe create more of a wealth gap. So for that reason, D is our best answer, even though on the subject of relevance, it looks like B hits all the boxes. So look, the reason why I went through that is because we know what makes an argument relevant, but the next question we need to answer is what makes an argument strong. And so this is where we come into the SAFE framework, where these are a couple of filters that you can use to determine whether or not an argument is strong. So here's what the SAFE framework stands for. Number 1, is there a solution being offered? Number 2, does it avoid assumptions? 3, is it facts and evidence-based? And 4, is it ethics aligned? Is this what a future doctor would pick? So guys, if you're finding this helpful so far, this is just one of the many frameworks that I've got for the UCAT. And if you want to access all my frameworks in one place, then just click the first link in the description below. Otherwise, let's kick on with the first one, which is solutions offered. So a strong argument works on the problem in the STEM. We've gone through this already, but there's 2 ways it can do that. Number 1 is by supporting the proposal with a clear mechanism, or number 2, offering a reasonable alternative solution. So let's go through that. Feel free to pause the video now and have a go at this question. All right, so let's run through it. Should the government ban single plastic bags in supermarkets to reduce plastic pollution? That's our issue here. And so if we have a look at the option of B, that looks very enticing. Yes, when Ireland introduced a plastic bag levy, usage dropped by 90% within weeks, demonstrating that pricing mechanisms effectively change consumer behavior and reduce plastic waste. So directly relevant, and it's giving you a clear mechanism of support here because it's telling you how the pricing mechanisms can affect consumer behavior. It's also giving you facts and evidence base, so kind of dipping into the F of SAFE there as well. So for all those reasons, B is a fantastic answer here. Let's kick on to our next question. Feel free to pause the video here and have a go. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to go through this now. Should employers be required to provide on-site childcare facilities for working parents? Okay, interesting. So if we have a look through the options, yes, working parents face significant challenges balancing career and family responsibilities and need support. Okay, potentially. Yes, on-site childcare would reduce employee stress and improve productivity by allowing parents to check on their children during the workday. Okay, maybe a bit lower on the rung, but potentially. We've got C. No, flexible working arrangements allowing parents to work from home when needed would better support working parents without requiring expensive on-site infrastructure. So that's looking really good in my opinion, because it's looking at the issue here, which is working parents having to take care of their children, but giving you a reasonable alternative in doing so without just blindly accepting the premise of what this is suggesting. And then lastly, no, small businesses can't afford to build and staff childcare facilities. So that doesn't really look at the employee side of things. So for that reason, also lower. So the strongest argument here would probably be C, because it's giving you a reasonable alternative to the solution. All right, so that's solutions offered, where it proposes either a reasonable mechanism or a reasonable alternative. Let's move on to step number 2, which is avoiding assumptions in both the question and the options. Strong arguments avoid assumptions, generalizations, and opinions. And assumptions can be made in either the options. An example might be, no, the real problem is slow drivers, or it can be in the STEM. For example, should school uniforms be mandatory to reduce bullying among students? And the assumption there is if we include school uniforms, then it's going to somehow reduce bullying among students. And unless there's a clear mechanism to link the two, you can't make that assumption. So let's go through a couple of examples to put this into practice. Feel free to pause the video here and have a go at this question. So let's run through this question together now. Should museums and galleries charge admission fees to generate revenue for conservation and new exhibitions? So what the aim here is to generate revenue. So let's have a look at the options and see what sticks. Yes, visitors who pay for entry value the experience more and are more likely to engage meaningfully with the exhibits. As if to say that if you don't pay, you don't care. And that's a bit of an opinion, isn't it? So that one's going way down. B, yes, admission fees provide necessary funding while being affordable for most people at £10 to £15 per visit. Now, again, that's an assumption here, saying that £10 to £15 is affordable for most people. So for that reason, we're going to pop that down. And C, no, the real problem is that museums waste money on expensive temporary exhibitions rather than focusing on their permanent collections. The real problem, that's kind of like a dead giveaway of this being more of an opinion. So that's going to go down as well. And so we're left with D here. No, charging fees would prevent low-income families from accessing cultural institutions, undermining museums' educational mission. So this one is a good one because not only does it address this factor of generating revenue, what it's essentially saying is it's questioning the premise of this issue, saying that museums aren't there to generate revenue, they have an educational mission at heart. And by charging the fees, you'd be preventing low-income families from accessing this cultural view. So maybe dipping into the concept of E, which is all about ethics aligned, it's a stronger argument in that case as well, where you want to be making things more accessible to the everyday person. Because otherwise, if you're not, then you're just furthering a wealth divide that might already exist. And that's not what you want to do in medicine. So for that reason, D is a good answer. Let's move on to our next question. Feel free to pause the video here and have a go. All right, so let's run through it now. Should companies be required to include mental health coverage in all employee health insurance plans to improve workplace well-being? So that's our end goal, our issue here, improving workplace well-being. So we've got to find stuff that's relevant, but also strong. And if you've had a read through the options, hopefully C is ticking those boxes for you. So if you have a read of C, no. Requiring mental health coverage assumes that insurance-based treatment is the most effective way to support employee well-being. So it's questioning what's in here. So that's a good thing because it's getting you to think about what a better solution might be. And not only that, and it gives us that solution when it says workplace culture is changing and reduced working hours might better address the root causes of workplace stress. So on a lot of boxes, it being relevant and then looking at the reasonable solution offered and then avoiding the assumption, we have a very strong answer here. Now, that was avoiding assumptions in both the questions and options. So let's kick on to the third aspect of the SAFE framework, which is facts or evidence-based. Strong arguments use data, concrete examples, or clear mechanisms to back it up. They answer the question, how do we know this? So here's an example. Feel free to pause the video and have a go. I mean, hopefully it's pretty obvious, right? Should governments implement mandatory food waste recycling for households to reduce environmental impact? Yes, here's an example of South Korea doing it, which is essentially what B says. So for that reason, B immediately sticks out like a sore thumb as a good answer, and it is going to be the strongest answer when it comes to all these options. Let's have a look at the next one. Pause the video now and have a go. All right, let's run through it. Should professional sports leagues limit the number of matches players can compete in per season to reduce injury rates? And having a look at option A, yes, studies of elite footballers show that yada, yada, yada. I mean, the fact that it says studies here is a really promising thing because it's factual, it's evidence-based. So with that in mind, we're automatically putting this higher up in our rankings. We read the rest of it, it supports what it's talking about in terms of relevancy, so we're happy with it. And if we just read through B, C, and D, we see that none of these are factually based and aren't as strong as option A in this case. So A is our answer. So that's a quick point on facts and evidence-based. To be honest, you won't find many recognizing assumptions questions that are like that, but once you do, it's just a freebie question. So you can use that to select your best answer. And lastly is the concept of ethics aligned. Is this what a future doctor would pick? Strong arguments are going to be the ones that fit professional values like fairness, respect, safety, and non-discrimination. And if I want you to think about it a certain way, it's this. If it looks bad in front of an admissions panel, then it's not the strongest answer. We've seen a couple of cases where we've already had to use ethics aligned to select the right answer, and it honestly does get used quite a lot. So here's just a couple more examples to drive that home. Number one is this. So feel free to pause the video here and have a go. Okay, so let's run through this one together. So let's have a read of the statement here. Should pharmaceutical companies be permitted to advertise prescription medications directly to consumers? Notice how it doesn't say to XYZ in this case. It doesn't actually have an issue at hand. So it's hard to use that relevance gate. So that essentially just means that all of these are going to be somewhat relevant, which means that we have to use the SAFE framework to be able to answer this question. So let's run through it. A, yes, patients have the right to know about all available treatment options for their conditions. That sounds like a really good one, and they absolutely do have all the right to know. So that's up there. B, yes, advertising increases competition between drug manufacturers, potentially lowering prices. Now, lower prices for the everyday person, absolutely a win. So, that's still up there as well. Maybe a smaller arrow. Let's have a look at C. No, medical treatment decisions should be based on clinical expertise rather than commercial marketing, as direct advertising may lead patients to request inappropriate medications. So this one, I'm going to put a big arrow for because about making the right decision. And that decision is based on what you learn in medical school and your years working as a doctor, rather than a patient coming up to you, seeing that they saw an ad for some heartburn medication and requesting that. That might be the right thing, but at the end of the day, you only know if it's the right thing through clinical expertise. So that one has a massive tick in my books. And D, no, pharmaceutical advertising is expensive and companies would need to raise drug prices to cover costs. Maybe they would, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really address the consumer side of things here. So for that reason, C is going to be our strongest answer because it's the most ethically aligned when it comes to all of these options. Hope that makes sense. Let's go through one more example, pause the video here and have a go. All right, so should fashion retailers be legally required to publicly disclose the factories and wages of workers who produce their clothing? So once again, no for XYZ reason, so everything's kind of relevant. Let's go through it. Yes, consumers have the right to know where products come from so they can make informed purchase decisions. Okay, sure. Small arrow, small up, that's decent. Yes, transparency requirements would pressure companies to ensure workers receive fair wages and safe working conditions, protecting vulnerable workers from exploitation. Now, the whole field of medicine is all about equity. It's about giving care to those that need it most. And vulnerable populations, in this case vulnerable workers, are absolutely a part of that. So, big tick in my books here. But, as always, let's go through the other ones. No, requiring disclosure would put retailers at a competitive disadvantage if their competitors in other countries face no such requirements. Potentially, that is probably the reality of the world at the moment, but it's also not ethically aligned. Like, you want, in an ethically beautiful world, everyone to be following these requirements so that the vulnerable workers don't get exploited. So for that reason, I'm probably going to put that down. And D, no, this would create additional bureaucratic burden for compliance costs for businesses. Once again, completely disregarding the workers in the situation, so putting that down. And for that reason, B here gives us our best answer. So hopefully you've been able to see how the SAFE framework, along with the gate of relevance, allows us to select the best answer in a lot of these questions that come across to us. Now, the only way to get better at this is to keep on doing more and more questions. And if you don't already have a question platform to do these questions on, then you can use the code Farhan for 10% off MedEntry. Otherwise, here are just a couple of traps that people fall into when it comes to recognizing assumptions questions. Number one is agreeing with the argument personally, even if it doesn't fix the problem. Number two is picking arguments that sound smart but miss the point, or in other words, they're missing the relevance. And number three is choosing arguments based on it works, so it's right. Now, you've got to apply the SAFE framework so that you know if it's giving you solutions, if it's avoiding assumptions, if it's facts and evidence-based, and if it's ethically aligned. So here's your do's and don'ts. Do check whether the option helps solve the problem. Do consider alternative solutions when suggested. And do think, what would a future doctor pick? Don't pick vague, generalizing statements without clear logic. Don't blindly accept the question's assumptions. And don't ignore ethics because the argument works. We want to put ethics above all as well. So here's your next step. For the next 10 recognizing assumptions questions, I need you to adopt the two-step framework, which is number one, the gate of relevance. If an argument is not relevant, just immediately get rid of it. If it is relevant, then use the filter of the SAFE framework. That is, the solutions, avoiding assumptions, facts and evidence-based, and then ethically aligned. And then see how much your speed and accuracy improves as a result.